Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody?
All right.
Good. Beverly, you doing okay? Beverly's still muted. Get that out of the way. All right. I'm gonna give us about one more minute here and we're gonna get started.
Okay. Hey, how are you, Dr. Lamb?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you. I'll stop my share. I've got it where I want it here. We'll get started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome
Good
back to
morning.
DEOL 732 Leadership. Let me share my screen and we'll do a quick update of where we are. I believe this is our last class session. Um, Been a very good semester. I hope that you have enjoyed the reading. This semester has been about gathering leadership content for your personal use, for your growth and development, but just as importantly, for your dissertation. Dissertations are about becoming well read. They're about knowing the literature. And our core competency is leadership, so you've got to know the literature. Um, and so this has been a massive, I know, sometimes overwhelming amount of reading and gathering, but that's what you do. So let's look at our weekly schedule. If I can get my screen to share again. Very good. All right, I'll pull up the schedule right quick. All right, we're in week 14. Yeah, we're in week 14, Saturday, April 26th. We're going to present our professional development leadership plans. Next week will be the last week in terms of content. Of course, we won't meet. You need to make sure you hit Law 18, the law of sacrifice. There's a reason why I kept it to why I have it last. It's my last word of advice. I've talked to you about all semester about knowing the difference between hard work and sacrifice. It's just been a setup. That's not been unintentional. That's been intentional. Because I saved that law for last. And since I'm not going to be with you next week, we're going to talk about it here in just a minute. But I've talked 1,000 times about what are you willing to give up to do a dissertation? What are you willing to give up to be a leader? We expect hard work. That's not the question. We're not asking you, will you work hard? That's assumed. What we're asking you is, what will you give up? That's what you have to be able to determine. And the first test of that is in your dissertation. And then you're to take that out into the world of work with you. What are you willing to give up to get this accomplished? And then you'll do the rest of your activities. So let's look at that. Here it is, the law of sacrifice, the heart of leadership. And I have directed our conversation this entire semester to this last lesson. Students make, candidates make, students make, candidates make, teachers make, employees make the mistake of thinking, once I get through this, then I can relax, I can coast, my life will change. I had a lady who was a student teacher when I was a school principal. And she wasn't the traditional undergraduate student teacher. She wasn't 21 or 22 years old. She was mid-30s. She had come back to school after having kids and getting them up school age. And we had her as a student teacher. And she was a dynamo. She was great. And I couldn't wait for her to get done so that I could hire her. As soon as I hired her, she basically quit. And her excuse was, I only worked that hard to get through. Now that I'm through, I don't have to work that hard. And she was right. She didn't. And I made sure at the end of that year, she didn't have to work at all for me. And so, and I've talked about this in the school business, if you hire somebody after the 20 days, in some districts, it's the first 10 days, but statewide in North Carolina, if you hire somebody after the first 20 days, they're automatically on an end of year non-renewable contract. So if you come and student teach with us and then you're finishing out the year on a regular contract, guess what happens? At the end of that year, there's no expectation of employment. We've talked about right to work state. And so I let her work somewhere else. And everybody was upset and she was upset. Why? But you can't, you can't just work this hard and sacrifice to get the job, this leadership position, and then quit. You can't expect people to do more than you will do. You've got to adjust your lifestyle to the sacrifices that you have to make. Now, you have to prioritize what's important to you. There's only success with sacrifice, give up more than others. The higher level of leadership, the higher the sacrifice all the time. And finally, remember that sacrifice never ends. You have to adjust to the new normal. You have to figure out what's important in your life if you're going to be a leader. And if you're having to give up too much or you can't adjust your life, then you need to make a different career path for yourself. Now, my last bit of advice this morning. Let me stop my share so I can see everybody. Again, good morning. I read a post this morning from one of our classmates, and it talked about they were doing a self-assessment, said I'm not well with delegating and I'm not well with conflict. Think about that one for a minute. I'm not good with delegating and I'm not good with conflict. One causes the other. Did you know that? Did you know that? One causes the other. They are not two separate things. They are one thing. One causes the other. Not being good with conflict, wanting to avoid conflict, causes us as leaders to take on more and more and not delegate it because then we would be in a conflict about the people we delegate it to don't want it or the job that they do when they get it. And so I'll just do it myself. You have to break that cycle of causation if you're going to be a leader because you're already giving up more than everybody else. And if you take on the responsibility of everybody else's job, not delegating what they're supposed to be doing, then you can't handle all of that. But that wanting to avoid conflict, having those critical conversations, is what leads to that overwork and burnout, where you take on everybody else's work. You don't delegate it because you're trying to avoid conflict. If you can't deal with conflict, you can't be a leader because you'll snow yourself under. You're a conscientious person. You wouldn't be in this program if you weren't. And you'll take on too much. So there's a fine line there between sacrifice, I'm going to do more, and doing everybody else's work to avoid conflict. If you can't deal with conflict, leadership's not for you. That's my last bit of advice. All right. I'm going to turn my camera off so we can start our shares today. So I had a person who asked to go first today. Latasha,
Good morning, everybody.
good morning. So if you'll share your screen and get started.
Can everyone hear me good? Because I know the last time it said someone said I sounded muffled.
We can hear you.
Okay, can you all see my screen?
We can see your screen.
So again, good morning. My name is Latasha, and today I'll be presenting my leadership development plan, which I call a journey towards leadership in higher education. So as I aspire to transition from a human resources practitioner into a leadership role in higher education, I feel that it's essential that I understand not only my leadership potential, but also the behavioral traits that shape my effectiveness. So within this professional leadership development plan, I will showcase my strengths and growth areas, identify my leadership theories that align with my natural style, and I also provide a comprehensive roadmap for my professional development over the next 1 to 2 years. My leadership reflection stems from my Clifton Strengths Assessment, my DISC profile, and then the Johari Window Trust Quotient Assessment, as well as what I've learned in our doctoral level leadership theory and practice coursework. These experiences have collectively shaped my understanding of who I am as a leader and who I aspire to become. So I didn't utilize all of my assessments. I only pulled the top 3 for my self-assessment summary. And so my top 5 strengths in the strengths finder were harmony, belief, responsibility, developer, and learner. And these strengths place me in the executing and relationship building domains, which are ideal for HR as well as student affairs leadership. So when it comes to harmony, I seek consensus and minimize conflict, which is something that Dr. Lamb just was speaking about. My belief strength is driven by my core values and sense of purpose. My responsibility strength pulls from me following through on commitments and values that I trust. My developer strength is where I encourage growth in others. And then my learner strength is where I'm driven by the process of continually learning. When it comes to my DISC profile, it revealed that I have the IS style, which is characterized by warmth, collaboration, empathy, and relationship orientation. Here is where I thrive in cooperative environments and I build community, which also could be essential to student development, as well as what I do in HR. And last but certainly not least, when it came to the Johari Window Assessment, my strengths were intimacy and credibility, which indicates that I have the ability to create a safe and trustworthy environment where others feel comfortable confiding in me. But my developmental opportunity was identified as self-orientation. And here I can improve by focusing more on long-term relationships over personal performance metrics. And so I listed things that I could do to address this developmental opportunity area, and I decided that I could practice active listening and have open-ended questions in all of my interactions. I can increase my comfort with uncertainty by embracing co-creation over control. I can engage in mindfulness practices to remain present and reduce ego-driven responses. I can prioritize my long-term relationship building over short-term achievement. And then I can also apply Maxwell's law of connection by investing in personal relationships. These findings in my assessment also align closely with Norhouse's discussion of authentic and servant leadership, which emphasize trust, humility, and follower development. But it also highlighted Maxwell's law of solid ground and law of addition, which further stresses that effective leadership must be rooted in trust and service. So my top 5 leadership strengths were empathy and relationship building, which pull from my harmony and developer strengths on the Strengths Finder assessment, as well as my DISC profile of the IS style, and then my intimacy strength from the Johari window assessment. And so here is where I build authentic trust-based relationships. And then my second strength was values-driven purpose and integrity, which pull from my belief strength and my credibility strength from the Johari window assessment. And this is where I lead from a clear moral compass, aligning my decisions with core values of equity and justice. My third strength was dependability and personal accountability, which pull from my responsibility strength from the Strengths Finder assessment. Because I'm someone who others can count on, I follow through and take ownership. I build credibility as well as organizational trust. And this could be critical in HR leadership for policy implementation, such as handling sensitive issues and modeling ethical behaviors. My fourth strength was growth oriented and development leadership, which pulled from my developer and learner strengths from the Strengths Finder assessment. And here is where I naturally nurture growth in others and seek self improvement for this area. And so this is ideal for leadership development programs, student mentoring, and as well as facilitating learning communities. And then my last leadership strength was communication and collaborative influence, which pulled from my IS style from the DISC profile. And this is where I'm approachable, supportive, and inspiring, which are qualities that can unify teams and engage in diverse populations. So my top 5 weaknesses as well as areas for growth were avoidance and conflict. Again, one of the ones that Dr. Lamb just spoke about, and this pulled from my harmony strength from the Cliff strengths as well as my IS style from the DISC profile. And it's because I naturally seek peace and consensus, which could be a strength, but also this can lead to conflict avoidance, which prevents critical conversations or delay in resolving team issues. And the impact is avoiding tough decisions can lead to unresolved interpersonal or organizational tensions. So, a strategy for improvement for me is to use structured conflict resolution techniques, such as like crucial conversations training, as well as apply my emotional intelligence to balance empathy with assertiveness. My second weakness was overcommitment and difficulty saying no, which pulled from my responsibility developer strength, as well as my IS style from my DISC profile. And this is because I have a deep commitment to helping others and following through on promises. Um, but it can lead to burnout or being stretched too thin. So the impact is overextending myself can dilute the quality of my work and reduce my ability for strategic initiatives. And so, an improvement strategy is to practice boundary setting techniques and delegate where possible, as well as revisit my core values to prioritize my commitments. My third weakness was low self promotion and understanding of accomplishments, which pull from my belief in harmony strength, as well as the steadiness from my DISC profile. Here, I'm value driven and humble, but in leadership roles, visibility and influence matter. I tend to undersell my impact, which results in others not fully recognizing my contributions or leadership potential. So, an improvement strategy for this area is to practice articulating my success in terms of team and mission impact, and possibly utilize storytelling to frame achievements authentically. My fourth weakness or area of growth was sensitivity to feedback or criticism. And these pull from my intimacy strength from the Johari window, as well as my IS style and disc. And this is because I care deeply about relationships, which may make critical feedback feel personal rather than constructive, which can also slow personal growth or lead to emotional responses in professional settings. So, a strategy for improvement here is to reframe feedback as an opportunity for development and seek out regular feedback to normalize the process. And then my last weakness or area of growth was risk aversion and reluctance to challenge the status quo. And this pulled from my steadiness strength in the disc profile, as well as my harmony and belief strength. And this is because I prefer stability and values aligned actions. And while this provides grounding, it may limit bold innovation or willingness to confront institutional inefficiencies. And the impact of this is resistance to necessary change or new initiative can hinder institutional growth. So, an improvement strategy here is to partner with visionary thinkers and utilize my learner strength to research and pilot new approaches with low risk entry points. So, when it comes to the theoretical foundations of my leadership, two leadership theories that resonate deeply with my values and style were servant leadership and transformational leadership. Both of these offer frameworks that align closely with my natural tendencies and my aspirations for leadership in higher education. So, when it comes to servant leadership, Peter Norhaus described servant leadership as the needs of others first, emphasize placing the needs of others first, and empowering follower and fostering community. And so, as you can see, I pull from my developer responsibility and harmony strengths, which is what servant leadership model. Well, the model mirrors my developer harmony and responsibility strength, which is especially applicable in higher education because student well-being and development is central. So servant leadership values listening, empathy, and stewardship competence, and I feel that I constantly demonstrate them. However, I wish to also refine them in this area. So the key characteristics of servant leadership that I embody is listening and empathy. I lead by being present and attentive to others' needs. The commitment to growth of people, which is seen in my developer strength, and then stewardship and community building. Because I have a values driven mindset and natural warmth, which helps me build inclusive spaces where others can thrive. When it comes to transformational leadership, which also was highlighted by Norhaus, it involves inspiring others to achieve more than the thought possible through vision, motivation, and individualized support. So here, my belief and learner strength, as well as my IS profile, support this model because I'm committed to helping others grow while maintaining a broader institutional vision. And this theory supports my desire to not only manage student programs in the future, but also to transform them in alignment with equity, inclusion, and excellence. And so the key characteristics that I embody when it comes to transformational leadership are purpose-driven influence because I seek to make meaningful change grounded in personal integrity, empowering others. I see leadership as a shared process and supporting others in becoming their best selves, and then continuous improvement because I'm always learning and seeking ways to improve systems as well as support student growth. So, based on my assessments and professional goals, these are a few areas I've identified for leadership growth. So, to improve my professional learning, I can enroll in leadership development seminars, but I can also utilize the North strategies and read and reflect on the strength based leaderships weekly to integrate ideas into a coaching style. The second one is mentorship, and I could seek a mentor who embodies transformational leadership and student affairs, but I also can offer to mentor junior HR staffs in my current role, which will apply, which I can apply my developer strength. And then last is feedback mechanisms. So I can conduct quarterly 360 feedback sessions um, and use the feedback to enhance my intimacy and credibility strength and trust building relationships. So my action plan and timeline lists specific strategies and a timeline to guide my development within the next 1 to 2 years. So my first goal is to improve my self-orientation, which pulled from my Johari window assessment. My action plan is to practice active listening, regularly ask for feedback, and journal interactions focused on others. The timeline for this is ongoing, and the evaluation method is basically to observe improvement in peer evaluations as well as just reflect in journaling. My second goal is to improve conflict management and assertiveness. And here, my action plan is to lean into my harmony strength and attend a crucial conversation training, as well as role play scenarios with peers and practice direct communication in low stake environments. This timeline I have is to begin summer of 2025, but it's also an ongoing practice and coaching through 2026. And my evaluation method is to complete a conflict resolution certification and or workshop. My third goal is to enhance my leadership presence and communication. Although I communicate well interpersonally, I want to be able to strengthen and execute my executive presence. So I could utilize my credibility in this feedback as an action plan to refine my public speaking and join the Toastmasters group, as well as seek feedback from mentors and lead workshops or meetings. So my timeline for this is to begin with the 6 months and review this as a quarterly progress. And then my evaluation method is to present in possibly 2 leadership meetings as well as campus events. My last goal is to expand my professional network in higher education. Um, and for this is because I tend to focus on relationships and values, sometimes at the expense of personal visibility. So an action plan I have is possibly attend 2 conferences a year, such as like NASPA or ACPA, as well as engage with student affairs mentors. The timeline for this is within 12 months, and my evaluation method is to document 5 new contacts and 2 mentor relationships. And so, from my action plan and timeline, I understand that leadership development is a continuous process. I plan to regularly reflect through journaling, engage in monthly check-ins with a mentor, as well as collect feedback from students and or colleagues. I also intend to remain active in national professional organizations and participate in annual leadership assessments to measure my growth against this plan. As for my reflection, I understand that leadership is not a title or position. It is a continuous journey of growth, courage, and service. Transitioning from human resources to aspiring a leadership role in student affairs is more than a career change. It is a shift in purpose, philosophy, and leadership approach. My personal development, my personal leadership development plan reflects a deep commitment to becoming the kind of leader who builds trust, cultivates growth, and transforms community. And by embracing these principles of transformational leadership, I am prepared to meet the demands of a dynamic, student-centered profession with empathy, vision, and integrity. Throughout this semester, I've experienced a profound evolution of my understanding of leadership, both theoretically and personally. The assessments, readings, and class discussions have provided me with a mirror and a map, a clear reflection of who I am, and a more defined direction for who I want to become. And when it comes to our coursework, it emphasized that leadership is both a personal journey and a relational act. Readers for North House helped me to explore leadership through different theoretical lenses, such as servant leadership, transformational leadership, authentic leadership, and adaptive. And our class dialogue made it clear that effective leaders are those who are self aware, emotionally intelligent, possess empathy, and are committed to continuous learning. So, above all, I've learned that leadership is not about having all the answers, but it's about showing up with humility, curiosity, and a willingness to grow alongside others. This semester has not only enhanced my technical leadership skills, but also expanded my emotional capacity to lead with presence, purpose, and courage. And this concludes my presentation.
Excellent. Yay. Very good. Very, very good. Couple of things that Latasha talked about that we need to talk about further quickly here. When I do references, and I do them every day for positions in leadership, the 2 things that I address every time are servant leadership and transformational leadership. Those are the two things that I reference every time. Those are the two most important. Of all the leadership styles and leadership theories, the two most important for success as a leader are servant leadership, that you understand your job is to make the people that work for you successful and that you have to serve them, not just boss them. And transformational, you must inspire and motivate them to that end. Um, and so I'm glad that she highlighted those two. Those are the two most important in leadership in terms of projecting, can somebody do that? Um, and then I want to talk about what your role, your formal role is as a leader. Now, Jeff's on the screen this morning. It's written in the law that school leaders have to give formative and summative feedback to their employees. It says you have to give suggestions for improvement of instruction. I'll use that one specifically. They have to give them feedback on their job performance, and they have to, at the end of the year, they have to evaluate them. There's very few businesses where you don't, leadership roles where you don't have to do both of those. That's standard in our business. That's the legal part of our business. If you don't do that, you can't just fire people out of hand. Well, you can, but then you'll get sued. Um, and I want to speak to that formative piece again. I'm nothing if not redundant. That feedback piece. We avoid that because we want to avoid conflict. Well, how do we expect people to get better if we don't tell them what they need to do or help them then? Not just tell them, but help them. And it circles back to, my pet peeve, which is the sandwich method of formative assessment, where we have one thing that this person really needs to work on, but we sandwich it between all these wonderful things that they do so that they don't hear that message. And we do that intentionally so they won't pick up on that and be a conflict. But then they don't hear that little piece that we needed for them to hear. We disguise it, we camouflage it, we kind of hide it, and then we say, well, yeah, we went over that with them. Did you really? If you had 17 things that was wonderful before and 18 after, and that sandwich, that one in between, you did not have a critical conversation. A critical conversation, we only focus on the one thing that we needed the improvement on. And that's that of conflict avoidance. And we use the sandwich method. The sandwich method is a method of conflict avoidance, but we don't do that formative piece of assessment where we're helping them and developing that feedback loop where we can work with them to improve the part that really needs to be improved. We've got to get out of the habit as leaders of doing the sandwich method. I understand why we do it. It's mostly for conflict avoidance. And then too many times, then they don't hear the message. And then we continue to be unhappy with their performance. But that's on us for not having that critical conversation with them. That's the number one pitfall of new leaders. Number one is that conflict avoidance, avoiding those critical conversations, using that sandwich method of feedback. And then at the end of the year, when we do the summative evaluation, all of a sudden there it is. And the followership feels betrayed that you didn't do that. You're just delaying your discomfort. And think about this. They did not perform the whole entire period. Not only did eventually there's going to be a conflict, but they didn't perform for the organization or the client system that whole time. And so you've not only malpracticed on your followers, you've malpracticed on your client system as well. You let them malpractice all year long. You can pay me now or pay me later. That's what leadership's about. It's about paying me now. Deal with the things, fix them now. Don't wait for them to, they won't just work themselves out. Fix them now. That's the lesson to be learned here. Latasha, that was a great presentation this morning. You weave that together very well. You've shown that you have mastered the literature this semester.
Thank you.
All righty. Very good. All right. We're moving on to our next presentation this morning, and thank you again for being with me. All right, I'm gonna stop my camera so somebody else can share. It seems to work better when I do that. Who's going to be next in our group this morning?
I don't think anybody wants to follow Latasha's
It was very good. I'm telling you
presentation.
what. She just
Incredible work there.
Yeah, it was. She not weave it together just beautifully.
Yep, she did.
Wonderful synthesis of the literature. And that's how you have to be able to put that literature together, especially to write your dissertation in your chapter 2. You have to synthesize it. What does it mean? How does it all work together? Um, it can't just be, that's why they talk to you in the literature review about stacking. All right, just here's this stuff, here's this stuff, here's this stuff. But how does it weave together? How do you make it make sense? How do you come to conclusions out of it? And that's what she did in hers this morning. I'll just tell you on the side, she's been grinding so hard on that lit review, on doing annotated bibliography. She's been working with her coach, and I've been trying. I'm not much help, but I've been trying to help too. But she's really getting it on how you put literature together and how you form your toolkit of skills by being able to assimilate the literature. That's what this semester is really about, is mastering that body of work, not just being able to regret, but how does it work together? That's what this whole course has been about. And she just demonstrated. If she'd have had a better teacher than me, she'd have been really great. She was great already, though. All right, Jeff. Let's see what you got to say this morning.
Okay, since you called me out now,
I did. You know I will.
let me see if I can pull mine up real quick here. Can you guys see my screen?
Not yet.
Can you guys see my
We can
screen?
see it now.
All right, great. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to now present my personal development leadership plan. And what I've done is I've gone back in history just a little bit to give you a better picture of my leadership journey. So my vision statement is to be an influential leader, fostering growth, innovation, and sustainable development through servant and transformational leadership. In my leadership journey, it's been about 22 years worth of growth. In my paper, I explain my high school experience in JRTC, which helped cultivate transactional leadership in me. And back then, my influential leaders were Zig Ziglar and Les Brown. The evolution of that transactional leadership, because of the military experience, essentially, it was driven by rewards and punitive systems. which more Northhouse talks about that in the book. And so I wanted to transition from a transactional leader to a transformational leader. And one of the books that helped me do that was a book by Denzel Washington, A Hand to Guide Me. And it was a compilation of people in his life and other leaders' lives who had influential times with them, who dug deeper into how to motivate people, how to inspire people to get them to do the extraordinary things in life. And so overcoming those challenges in my early years of leadership, I struggled with self-confidence early on. Took counseling sessions through a Christian counselor to help kind of resolve some inferiority complex, inferiority complex is where you are intimidated by people or you feel less than when you're in a group of people. And so walking through those mental steps to help remediate some of those things. And a book called The Confidence Gap. I don't know if you guys have read that book by Harris. It actually dives into those type of mindsets and developing what he called thinking maps in your head of what you should do in the event you have a moment like that in time. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that book or not, but it's a great read. And then I learned to act with value-driven courage despite fear. And this is one of the things that I think Latasha was alluding to, is that even in the event that you have conflict, you still have to react. You still have to resolve the situation or the task. And there again, there's a military mindset. You go to war, you have a weapon, you try to accomplish the task, accomplish the goal, but there is fear present. So how do we have that critical conversation, or how do we attack that problem, even though we have some fear in those things? So in my leadership assessments over the years, I've taken several leadership assessments, and so very surprising to me when you're talking about inferiority complex and when you're talking about resolution, being able to resolve resolutions and not avoiding it, as Dr. Lamb mentioned before, you would assume that on your Johari window, you are way far to the left because you're not open, you're very closed. But what I found out in my assessment is that I'm actually very open. I'm further to the right and down to the right than I assumed at first. So that was very interesting to see. So I have a very strong openness to feedback. In the Truest Suite assessment, my biggest strengths were intimacy, impact, and inviting. I'm a very caring person. I'm a very open person. Some opportunities that I see for growth in my assessment was to improve clarity and then relevance and communication. And I think I can be a better, essentially a better communicator, a better speaker. And so I plan on working on those things in the near future. So two of my biggest strengths, and one of them is servant leadership, and my insights were gleaned from Greenleaf. He is also one of our theorists in the Northhouse book. And so my strengths in that was resilience, service, communication, dedication to growth. My growth areas were strategic decision-making, mentorship, succession planning. And these are three areas that I think Dr. Lamb alluded to earlier, is that we have to be able to make strong decisions and make decisions quickly because of the number of people that it affects on a daily basis. As leaders, we have to develop a mentorship where we mentor, whether it's teachers or students or other peers in certain areas of education or business. And then how well do we session plan? And so that was one interesting insight for me because a lot of times as leaders, we do not think about who's going to come before us, essentially. How do we plan ahead so that transitional moments in our lives are not hindered because we didn't plan for someone to, take our position or take our place, essentially. And then some key practices that I plan to develop is mentorship, and then build that trust, continue to build that trust, and then community building or community involvement. My second leadership style is based on Bass. We also know that Burns also helped develop transformational leadership theory back in the early 70s. And four components that I pull from that are charisma. I'm a very inspirational person. That intellectual stimulation was interesting to me because a lot of times in leadership, we do not look for people who are smarter than us to glean from. And I think it's important, as I heard someone say, that it's always better to hire someone smarter than you. Helps get the job done. And then that individual consideration. And that is just thinking about how you can support others and help them develop. And some of that is also in servant leadership as well. And then emphasize ethical motivation, innovation, and then modeling vision-driven leadership. And so my short-term leadership goals for the next 3 to 5 years is to expand influence. I want to create content, attending networking events, enhance my mentorship. I want to be able to mentor at least 2 people in the next couple of years, and then build structured programs, something that I can actually format and then send out as a consultancy business. And then professional growth, I plan to attend executive training programs in the next couple of years. And those involve Franklin Covey. It's a Leader in Me program, which is nationally known through education and business. And so I would like to also say completing my doctoral program in organizational leadership. I would like to publish research on generational learning and development. I want to launch that consultancy for educational and business leaders. And then I want to be able to facilitate leadership development workshops in my next 5 years. My lifelong learning commitments is ongoing research in reading, in leadership development, leadership coaching. And I do that quite a bit with some of my staff members and teachers. And then I definitely want to develop that peer and mentor feedback to where I'm giving feedback, I'm able to give constructive feedback, but I'm also able to receive it. And so my final statement is from custodian to doctoral candidate, I'm on a journey of purpose, faith, and impact. Any questions?
Very good. Excellent job.
Good job,
Um,
Jeff.
Thank you.
there's an offshoot um, of inferiority that's written about in the literature that is one of the most developed canons of literature. It's called inferiority complex. You should delve into that. All of us should. There are 5 different functions of that. Um, and they're the traps that you fall into when you have an inferiority. It's again, in the literature, it's called inferiority complex. And they explore those 5 areas. We should all read those. And it gives us what it, the theoretical foundation of those and what it manifests itself as. We should all explore those as emerging leaders, because they're kind of steps that everybody has to work through as emerging leaders. And that's a good catch there, Jeff, is that inferiority that, and most everybody feels that. And it manifests itself in what is commonly in the canon of literature known as inferiority complex. You should read those things. The use of thinking maps. In practice, thinking maps basically are to-do lists. That's the practical application of those. And it's not just daily to-do lists. It's life and professional to-do lists. That's how you express those thinking maps. You got to get in the habit of taking notes, and writing things down, to help guide you. And not so much to go back and refer to them and read them, but it gives you clarity of purpose, and helps you work through those thinking maps if you can physically write them down. If you can't physically write it down, then you don't have clarity. And that's the thing to understand about a thinking map. If you can't express it on paper, then you probably don't have it fully formed. And that putting it on paper will help you fully form those maps. And those thinking maps help you get from where you are to where you want to be. And it has the individual steps. And that's the important part. It has the individual steps. And then leadership, and Jeff used a good military analogy there. Leadership is being able to act in spite of fear, overcoming that fear. People with courage, that doesn't mean they don't have fear. They're just able to overcome it. And that's what's important. I mean, I had a doctoral final defense. Well, I can't even remember all I've had. I've had a bunch. In the last 3 weeks, I have one more proposal this week and I'll be done. But I wore a suit so long, I thought I had a real job again. And so doing final defenses, are in person. And one of the ladies on the committee, Dr. Jones, said to me, I thought he was going to fall. He was so afraid. He was shaking. And he's big as you. We were never going to get him up if he fell. And I was like, but he handled it. He got through. He pushed through. Yeah, he was shaking. It looked like he might pass out there for a minute, but he persevered. He pushed through in spite of his fear. He got up and did his presentation. And he did a great job with it. But yeah, that's normal. But he showed up prepared. He had his slideshow. I'd gone over it with him multiple times. He prepared his presentation. He showed up in his suit and he did a great job. But he pushed through. I mean, he physically was shaking, but he pushed through. That's that emerging leadership part. It's normal to have that fear, but you got to develop that courage that goes along with it to be able to get it done, to achieve the goal. That's good military analogy. Courageous soldiers, they aren't afraid. They're able to deal with the fear. And that's what leadership is, being able to deal with fear, the doubt, the imposter syndrome, the inferiority complex, deal with all that stuff to put it away and push through. If you don't have those things, generally you're a narcissist, and that's the worst kind of leader, as we know. That narcissist I'm never wrong. That has that superiority complex that I can't be wrong. Because they're only transactional leaders. They're only in it for themselves, and it's all transactional. What can you do for me? People don't follow those leaders. Not in a situation where they have the alternative not to. And so, if you don't have that fear, if you don't have those nerves, then that tells me more about you in a negative way than in a positive way. Very good job today, Jeff. All right. Who's next on the hit parade? We're doing well this morning. We're seeing really good stuff. Turn my camera off. Who's going to share next?
I can if nobody else will.
There you go, Lauren.
Let me my slideshow. Share my screen. How's everyone doing this morning?
We're great.
Good. All right, you're all able to see it?
We can.
All righty. So this is my leadership development plan presentation. And just to have an overview, we're going to go over my strengths, my weaknesses, which is opportunities for growth, common feedback, and then leadership development needs, rationale, findings, and goals, and then the action steps, timeline, and reflection. So my leadership strengths are effective communication, integrity, problem solving, empathy, and the ability to work with different personal styles. So just diving into this area, as we were doing this project, I was like, we all can find like our strengths, but when we get to the weaknesses, it might be difficult to find. But for effective communication, I received this information, all over from coworkers to peers. The effective communication is just something that I feel like I've always had. Integrity, being like having integrity, the problem solving, empathy. But I want to also point out the last one, the ability to work with different personal styles. For this one, I've realized this as I've been walking through my life's journey, as God brings you to different stages and places, and being able to interact with different types of people, from started out with me working in fast food as a high schooler to going into government to going into corporate. So just being able to communicate and talk with different people and their personal styles is so important as well. So my weaknesses going into this, the level of innovation, procrastination, futuristic, intimacy, and the difficulty of saying no. So these 5 I've pointed out because Strength Finder, in Jahari's window self-assessments that I've done this semester. The futuristic was something that I've had when I also did a Strength Finder in early 2020s and undergrad, and that was something that was also pointed out in the Strengths Finder. So the futuristic, and we'll get into how I plan to fix all those. And then procrastination is something that I've realized even more within this semester and this year, that areas of way of growth and improvement. The difficulty of saying no is another thing that I've learned just starting this program, of understanding, balancing the levels of importance is something I'll talk about as well. So sometimes you just have to say no. When Dr. Lamb, he always say, sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. So you will have to say no to certain things that you may have the opportunity to say yes before because you had more time. So when you have a goal set, you have to say no. So the difficulty of saying no as well as the weaknesses. So my leadership style has been servant leadership. I've learned this in undergrad when I had to take some religion courses at Gardner Webb. But servant leadership was presented to me first in undergrad. I never heard about it beforehand. But the way it was presented to me was that's the way that Jesus, you know, was a leader. And that's how he is washing others people's feet. Like it's not about you, but it's about the other person, wanting to see that person get to their goals and reach their dreams. And ultimately, you will get to that as well, but making sure those around you are getting to that stage that they have told you that they're trying to get to, especially when you're leading them and they're following you. Wanting to see them get to that level just shows you how much you're willing to serve to get them to get to that next level. So servant leadership has been my leadership style, and even being in ministry and things like that, you have to have that. And there's something that's lacking in the world, but servant leadership is needed. So I wanted to point that out as well. My rationale and common feedback was presented by Jahari's window self-assessment that I've completed this semester, Strengths Finder, and then also I wanted to dig into also the people that I live with day to day, the people that I do life with day to day, my peers, my coworkers, my colleagues, and then the areas of, hey, you can grow in here, hey, you're doing well in here. So these are some things that I pointed out as well. So for the goals, I put some simple things right here, but I'll dive more into it in the next slide. So the goals are stop procrastinating, plan out levels of importance for the goal setting, and then set more short-term goals. So as we get into the action steps and timeline, the first one is to plan out the level of importance on action needed to get done within the day. I think that would be important to start doing even more, especially starting at, I say start starting at in summer 2025. So for that goal, that will help the area of growth when it comes to futuristic and also procrastination. So we'll get to it when I talk. Well, the next one I talk about Habakkuk 2:2, write the vision and make it plain. I see that I will say, hey, yeah, I'm gonna do this, or hey, yes, I'll say something, but I need to write it down as well because when you write the vision and make it plain, it's just to me, it can get you to go to the next step. And then also, I feel like the futuristic and the procrastination might go hand in hand in a way because setting more short-term goals, as you see in the second point, setting more short-term goals would be important for me to do as I um, step into new areas of my life. That way, it won't just be focusing on which your next goal is getting the doctorate degree, but you also need to set the goals in between. And the way I hear it a lot is get the small wins, uh, collect those small wins, and when you collect the small wins, it may make the journey more better, like more easier in a way to where you get to the bigger goal in the end. But setting the short term goals, and then also going into the next steps of receiving a leadership position in higher education. Is going to be levels to get to that. Currently, I'm in corporate, so wanted to make that transition from corporate world to higher education. And then again, setting more short-term goals beyond reaching these goals of the long-term goals, but make sure I'm setting more of those short-term goals in the end. And then just to cultivate everything together, the reflection, this class has been very helpful for me to understand not only the strengths that I have, but also the areas of growth and opportunity that I can grow upon within the first year and beyond of this program and even in life as well. From the Jahari's window self-assessment, I really enjoyed taking that because sometimes we may say, oh yeah, I'm doing good in this, but if we do the assessments, it will show you hey, this is an area of improvement. This is an area that you can grow in. And then also going beyond that with the strengths finders as well, showing you what your strengths, but sometimes your strengths can go into the areas of growth of how you can expand upon it and grow in those areas as well. And then also, like I mentioned before, my reflection of understanding servant leadership before it grew even more within this semester because of how deep we had to dive into the different areas of leadership. And I knew that, servant leadership about helping others and everything, but diving into the reading, diving into the times we talked in class, talking about servant leadership, talking about transformational leadership, and all the other leaderships are so important to understand how you can be better and how what actually are you doing as to be a great leader in today's. And then these are my resources. Any questions?
It's an excellent presentation. All right. I want to pick up on a couple of things from Lauren. Again, great job. All right, Lauren. What do you want to do in higher ed?
I know I want to be a dean of students.
Okay. You want to be on the student services side.
Yes, sir.
And so what you'd be looking to do is transition into that role and into that. Now, Dean of Students is not an entry level role. What would you have to do in order to prepare yourself for that?
To go into an entry level
There
role.
you go. That's part of that. That might be part of that sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so one of the things we have to remember about sacrifice is sometimes we have to, we've got this job, and let's say I'm just going to use some, we've got this job over here in the private sector, and we're making $40,000 a year. And this job comes open in the field that we want, and it pays $30,000 a year. But the boss man job pays 50. The higher level leadership job pays 50. That's the one we want. But what's the probability that we'll get hired into the $50,000 job if we haven't done the $30,000 job? Again, that's that piece. And also one of the things that the mental maps help us with making these plans is one of the things that Lauren pointed out, procrastination. It helps us overcome that. We write it down, we make a map, we have a plan to get there. And that helps us with procrastination. Now, small wins, very important, especially in that first establishing your credibility and legitimacy and helping you through that imposter syndrome or that inferiority is having some small wins in that, especially in that entry level leadership job. And there's some other things that you can do to help you through that initial phase when you're making that transition into that initial leadership level job. Not a high level job, but that you can do. I think I've shown you this before, but I'm going to go back and pull it again. So let me pull it up right quick and try not to take all of our time this morning. But here's a mental map that I've created for my master's candidates who are looking for their first job in school leadership. Let me do that down. All right. No, that's not the one. Right here. Right here. This is a mental map that I made. Now I do everything in lists because I'm a linear person. Uh, Let me get back to you now. Let me share my screen. So here's my mental map for my folks who are teacher level, who are wanting to transition to that initial leadership, dean of students or assistant principal level. When I work with those master students, here's the first. Here's what I have created for them. So let me share my screen. I can close that one. It should be the one furthest to the right, Dale. Here it is. Dale's top 10 first faculty meeting. When you become that initial school leader, know everybody's name. Barring this, move around the room and have the staff proximity, eye contact are important. Know everybody's name. You can't lead people if you don't know them. They can't get to know you. They won't feel the need to get to know you if you don't know them. We've talked about that 1,000 times. Number two, that's what Lauren was just talking about. Get an early win. Present something positive to the staff. That's not only for them to see the credibility in you and see you as a leader. It's also for you to overcome that imposter syndrome, that inferiority, that fear, that knowing everybody's name. That will help you with that. You'll feel more comfortable. That's the first one. The second one is get an early win. Give a staff a quick overview of who you are and your professional experience. Quick. Don't make it about you, but establish your credibility. That's not only, again, these are things to help you. Yes, it's going to, you're doing it for the purpose of them, but mostly this will help you. When you give your staff a quick overview of who you are and your professional, then I belong here. I belong here. Volunteer for something. Again, servant leader. Establish yourself as a servant leader. Present the opening of school plan and be conversant that you are a competent person. Again, you're overcoming your fear, your inferiority, your imposter. If you can do these things, this will help you. This is about you. Smile and laugh at the appropriate times. That will help with your nerves. That's good advice anytime, but especially at the beginning. Ask questions and take notes so you can follow up on requests. Recognize somebody for something positive that you've seen. Be specific. That will make you pay attention. That'll get you down in at the level of operations where you're paying attention to what's going on. It's not about you. It's about them. That'll take some of the pressure and nerves off of you as well. And it also helps them understand that you're there to help them, that you are a servant leader. Don't complain or seem worried about the opening of school. Kids will come, whether you're ready or not. Again, helps you ease your nerves and fear. And don't mention how busy you are. That's the expectation that leaders work harder. If you do that, then you're always at a deficit, folks. If you're complaining about how hard you're working or you resent that, then you're not in the right business. You're not in the right. This is a mental map to try to help my folks who are getting, a lot of them are getting their first leadership job. This is a mental map in the profession that I work most with, the K-12 people. This is a mental map for them. This helps establish them, their credibility as a leader with the group, but it also, more importantly, helps them overcome their own imposter syndrome. All right, I'm going to put somebody on the spot here. All right. Beverly, you're in the school business, aren't you? I know you. Thank you for
Yes,
being with us this morning. I know you're less than 100%. What do you think about that list? There was a time when you were at that level. What do you think about that list? Would that list have helped you?
absolutely. Absolutely. That list would help me, especially with the very complex laugh when not to laugh. Everything about that list I wish I had when I was a teacher.
That is a mental map.
Mhm.
That's exactly what you need. And now, if you don't have that mental map, then you need to plug into somebody, something to learn how to make your own about what's important. That mental mapping is for us. It helps us. I like lists, and most of them you see are diagrams and very, you know, very innovative and creative. I have none of that.
Can
Uh,
you share that list?
I will.
Thank you.
I will share that list. But any job that you aspire to, that first level, that's why I asked Lauren what her first level, that any job, you need to be able to make a mental map of if I got that job, these are the things that I would do. These are the things that I would do. You need to do it before you get the job. You need to be able so that you're prepared. Now, you notice that says by the first faculty meeting. So that means that you've probably been in the building as that new leader for at least 2 weeks, maybe even 3 or 4 weeks. But you've got a plan of what you want to do. Um, and so, um, okay, thank you about Jeff lost his internet. But you've got a plan. When you get hired, there's a time before you go to the building. And then when you get to the building, if you've got that list, okay, I need to find the annual and get everybody's name. I need to get a company directory and get everybody's name and all these different things. I need to be paying attention when I'm walking around the organization, the building, something I see that's positive that I can write it down. All these things that you need to do, preparing yourself so that when you get to that first meeting, you can overcome that inferiority, that insecurity, that imposter syndrome. These things help you. They establish what kind of leader that you're going to be to the followers, but also it helps you to overcome that initial fear that you have. You're establishing communication, you're establishing humor, intellect, you're establishing I'm a competent person, I can get things done. Um, you're establishing so many things through that list that the follower sees, but just as importantly, you're establishing those things for you. You're planning and preparing for success with that mental map. That's very, very important. And I will share that with y'all, that list that I have for that. I have those. All right. Very good. Thank you, Beverly. All right, we'll go to our next presentation here, Lauren. That was an excellent job. An excellent job.
Dr. Lamb, if you don't mind, I'll go next.
Thank you. Thank you. No.
I'll go after naming Dr. Lamb.
All right, that's good. Let me turn my camera off. There it goes.
All right, so I will be kind of transparent. Well, I will be transparent. Out of all the presentations we've done this semester, I do feel the most nervous about this one. And as I reflect on why I feel so nervous presenting on this topic, this is I think that this topic allows me to be vulnerable, and a
Yep.
lot of times I don't find myself to be a vulnerable person. And we'll talk more about that as I present. And those are going to be some things that I talk about that I need to work on. There's going to be some strengths that I have, but I just want to start off with that. I use the self-serve survey to assist me. I already kind of know how I felt about things, but I really liked how this kind of gave perspective of coworkers and relatives that I use. I have 4 participants in this, so it's kind of small. This test kind of recommended that you have at least 3, so I was happy that I had 4. And this is kind of where I see myself. I want to sit this up there. I diagnosed it myself and looked at it, but where I see myself as the orange person and the other people. All right, so on this page right here, the one that really shocked me the most as you look at this one, I scored myself lower than everyone else when it came to building effective teams. I guess I didn't realize how good I was at it. So that was a shocker for me, because compared to a lot of other things, that was actually my weakest on this slide right here. So according to those results from the self-stir, it shows that I'm motivated to continuously learn and develop. People see that in me. I draw out positive elements from life events and situations. People see that according to the results. I show a deep understanding and acceptance of life with all its ups and downs. I share my knowledge and experiences, and I'm aware of how my actions and behavior impact others. My weaknesses, my weaknesses is that I don't often share my thoughts and feelings, beliefs and knowledge, and this is according to the results. When you do that test, it kind of gives you a breakdown of these different things. I don't often ask for or respond to feedback, but I do give in my defense. Well, I don't want to be defensive when I'm talking right now, but I do a lot of self-reflection. Um, it's not like I go ask people, well, how do you feel about what I did? Or, you know what I mean? I don't do that. And I guess that's how I'm taking that response right there. I struggle to express myself in a way that reflects what I believe. I also I can't argue with the results that it gave. So I accept that. I struggle to provide autonomy and support as well as decision-making power. I do see that sometimes in PLC meetings, I might be more reserved. I see, and I take that sometimes when we're having a conversation, let's say we have a general conversation, there's a decision that needs to be made, and we kind of, or let's say there's a thought or idea. If we already agree upon it, I try not to, I don't want to be someone to kind of like throw a wrench. If we've already kind of came together and made a plan, throwing wrenches and I kind of want to just keep things smooth as possible. And I feel like that has been a practice that has really made me that's a weakness that I've had, especially if I feel like I have some good ideas, I'm not sharing them. Um I allow myself to make myself vulnerable often, and I kind of expressed that just now. So I want to take this time to kind of be a little vulnerable. This is practice, it's a school, it's a learning experience. So who is Naaman? And I want to take this moment to really talk about the things that I hide about myself in a sense. People wouldn't know. Nobody that I work with outside of my home really knows this. It's not even a conversation. Well, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. It's not a conversation I've had with my kids, but my name hasn't always been Naaman. That's the first thing that people don't know about me. When I was young, I was adopted. I was a junior. My name used to be Damon. I was adopted when I was 3. And right then and there, me just saying that I was adopted, that was a big impact on life. Even though I was young, it was still something I grew up understanding, something that I grew up knowing. It kind of affected the person that I am today. It helped me become who I am. People who adopted me, the people I call mom and dad, I laugh about it when I talk to my wife. I say, they've been old since I met them. My parents 60. Uh, they were in their 60s when I met them. So I was raised by older people. I was raised by older parents. Um, And on top of that, on top of those experiences, I had some more trauma when it came to maintaining relationships. By the time I was 18, I lost 4 brothers. I was adopted. Four of them would die. So I dealt with a lot of loss as a kid. And I think that experiencing those kinds of trauma really kind of made me to where I am right now. But I also think that these are the biggest things that I don't advertise about myself. But why would I? In a sense, why would I advertise those right there? Again, as I'm self-reflecting, like these are kind of what make me who I am, or help me to be who I am. So I kind of did an additional leadership strengths from my own perspective. I do feel like I'm a determined individual. I'm deeply self-motivated to push through challenges with resilience. I also have self-motivation. Even if it comes in spurts, I act on it. I just don't sit there. Got some projects that sometimes I don't have the time or the time to sacrifice for it. But when I do have it, I'm motivated to get it done. I do have a life perspective. I show deep understanding and acceptance. I've been through a lot of challenging situations, got to push through them. Knowledge sharing, I do feel like I share my insight and experiences when I feel safe to do so. I might not always be vulnerable, but sometimes I do find myself in situations where I am able to talk and communicate with people and give advice when needed. And the impact awareness, I'm aware of how my actions and behaviors affect others. That's really important to me because I know that my actions always don't just affect me, they affect people around me, and possibly even further than that. My weaknesses that I wanted to address was empathy. I do feel like I struggle to emotionally connect sometimes because I've been almost conditioned to kind of try to stay tough through situations. Emotional openness, I keep my emotions guarded due to past traumas, loss. Collaboration, I often isolate myself to avoid full engagement in teams. And that's something I really want to work on. And when we talk about my plan, that's going to come up on how I'm gonna address that because that's really all of these are important to me. But I think collaboration really hits home for me. Vulnerability, I hesitate to share my personal experiences and fears. You know, if I tell you everything in my bag, or if I tell you all my fears, you know, I'm kind of like have nothing to protect. How can I word it? I give you all like I have no superpower, I have no strength. Like if it was a battle, I gave you all my secret weapons in a sense, you know, and maybe that's not the way that I should think about it. That's my vulnerability right there. If I give you
Mhm.
everything, I have nothing else to give. So feedback engagement, I find it difficult to seek or respond openly to feedback. And again, that kind of corresponded with the previous data. I agree with that. You know, I do feel like I'm one of my hardest critics, but that shows that I'm not. Other people judging me a little harder, but I appreciated it. From that common feedback from peer reflection and self-assessment tools like the self-steer peer reflection, I've learned that others perceive me as someone who is motivated and grounded in life's experiences. However, these same reflections point out my struggles with emotional openness, feedback engagement, vulnerability, validating errors for growth. So my desired states, I got three of them listed. I want to work on empathy and emotional intelligence, collaboration and team engagement, and self-expression and vulnerability. And my rationale behind it is through deep self-reflection and the self-stir assessment, I recognize the strong need to address internal barriers created by trauma and life events. Feedback from peers also highlighted that some of my leadership potential is limited by emotional inaccessibility and isolation. Like, like if I was all right, these needs are essential if I'm to build meaningful relationships and lead from a place of authenticity. So going from here, leadership traits are the leaderships that resonate with me the most are servant leadership. I think that's the first one that I do daily. That's a priority. My mother used to tell me, my father did too. When we leave this home, or whenever name it, when you leave this home, you represent this home. All right, so that's already a service. I'm representing that. I'm representing my home. From there, you know, my profession. I'm an educator. I'm serving these students. I'm providing a service to them authentically. You know, I genuinely care about their education. You know, my role in their lives. But secondly, the second one that resonates with me because I chose two. The one that I don't feel like I'm as strong at is being authentic. I think once I work on being more authentic, I can become a more transformational leader. Yeah, in some areas of life, I can find myself as a transformational leader, but I won't say that's common. I wouldn't say that I'm more of a transformational leader than I am as a servant leader. So my thought process is if I work on becoming more authentic, maybe I can become a better transformational leader. All right, so the goals out of those three that we talked about earlier, and kind of a timeline on how I can get through this is cultivate emotional openness and empathy, possibly begin with working on with getting therapy to break through some emotional barriers. Somebody might be thinking, well, why haven't you got some of that earlier? I worked on it, did that, but you know, some things you got to work on a little harder. Practice active listening and intentional empathy in all work meetings. digging onto that one, practice active listening. At one point in life, I really felt like I was a really good listener. And then I don't know when it clicked when sometimes I find myself in conversations. Again, I'm being reflective right here, where it's not really a conversation, it's just someone else talking. And I find, and then when I try to engage in the conversations, it's not reciprocated, or I don't get a chance to time in. It might be a 3 or 5 minute conversation. I don't get to speak. Is it a conversation now, or am I just, I'm just, and sometimes I understand I have to be an ear, and then something I need to work on. So that's why I sent a goal. All right, journal emotions. So resources that I can use is to journal emotions and experiences weekly. I did kind of start that. When I leave work, as I'm driving in my car, I've got a voice recorder. I reflect on my day. But a timeline that I give myself to work on getting therapy, being consistent with a journal, 6 to 12 months. Strengthen collaborative leadership skills. Join a leader team based project within the next 6 months, and practice shared decision making with peers. I kind of do the second one because I am a part of a PLC community. I am a part of PLC, but I will make it a priority to be more engaged, more vocal. And I have noticed that change this semester. I've been trying to step up as a leader since that's kind of been the focus. That has been the focus. Attend one collaboration or communication workshop. So that's a resource that I plan to take advantage of to strengthen myself personally, outside of what I'm doing for my career, outside of what I'm doing at work. So the timeline that I gave myself to do that is 6 to 9 months. And third, develop and express an authentic leadership identity grounded in personal story and spiritual purpose. Share part of my personal story in a trusted setting. Got some safe places up here, a journal, blog group. I've actually considered some of these even before I did this research. I was thinking this way, but I never took it into action. So hopefully that this timeline is something that I really, really take serious, or that I can maintain seriousness behind, so that I can follow through for my own personal growth and my leadership journey. Read leadership materials that align with serving and authentic leadership. And I'm not going to forget transformational, but keep myself studied, keep myself informed, engage a mentor or spiritual advisor for monthly reflection. And again, everything that I just said, I've actually genuinely been thinking about. Now that I have this mapped out and written, it's just up to me to kind of take that action, and that's what leaders have to do. You got to take the action. It's one thing for me to just say it and have it written, but I need to take that next step. But this concludes my presentation.
Thank you. All right. So without playing amateur psychologist here, excellent job. When Naaman said, people see more in me than I see, again, that's an example of that inferiority, that imposter. That's common in emerging leaders. Again, it's a common theme. It's not a bad thing. But we have to recognize that so we can deal with it, to make those mental maps. And so that's the point that I wanted to make there now. What Naaman has described is classic symptoms of trauma. And so these are the classic ones that we see: withdrawal, isolation, self-preservation, valuing harmony over discord, protecting oneself, being closed, fear of vulnerability. Those are all classic trauma syndromes of someone who has lived through that. I did a dissertation final this week. One of mine, Ashley Graham from Charlotte, she did her final, and she did one on trauma. But she did it from the perspective of trauma sometimes is confused in the school business as ADHD because we think trauma is all the classic symptoms that Naaman just outlined, but sometimes trauma manifests itself as hyperactivity. And ADHD and trauma in our more enlightened version or vision of trauma is basically manifests the same way. But traditionally, we see trauma manifesting itself as Naaman just described. Now, he's exactly right, and that's the point I wanted to make. He's got to work with that piece of it. He's exactly right. And when he talked about his plan, he's going to work and get help in that area. That's exactly what we're talking about. Now, from a leadership perspective, we have to recognize those things and where we need to do some work and maybe where we need to get help. But we also have to recognize it for our employees, that they may need help. And so one of the things that I do again for emerging leaders in the school business is they have to go over and interview the people at human resources, not on how to hire and fire people, but what employee assistance benefits and programs that we have in our organization. Because we have a lot of people with trauma. And again, understanding some people act out or act in a way that Naaman is talking about, where basically they're introverted and withdrawn. But unfortunately, just like we're finding out with kids now, as we're getting better at it, some of them go the other way. They're not withdrawn and introverted, they're overly extroverted. And so again, I'm not asking you to be a psychologist, but understanding that your organization may have some avenues to deal with those kinds of things. And it's not weakness to either take advantage of them yourself or to make sure the people that you're responsible for, your followers, that you encourage them to take advantage of those things. To get help with these things to make them better employees. So again, trauma manifests itself in two different ways, not just one way, the traditional way that we think of it does. But in either way that it manifests itself in ourselves or in our followers, we need to get it dealt with. We need to get it dealt with because it becomes prescient in our lives. It becomes the most important thing. And until we deal with it, we won't be able to move on with other parts and reach our full potential. And our employees won't be able to reach their full potential. And that's what Naaman was talking about today. I salute you, Naaman. That was wonderful. It's a great self-reflection and understanding. But again, your background tells us that, that this is where you are. You can't escape that. You have nothing to do with that. That's not, that's not of your making. But what you choose to do with it is up to you. And I salute you for that. That was a great presentation. All right. Tawanda, you said you were going to go next.
Yes, sir.
I'll stop my video and let you get to sharing right along here.
All righty. Can everyone see my screen?
I can.
Great, great, great. Good morning to everyone. And Naaman, I would just like to say thank you for sharing. Like that was just really powerful because you come from a place of vulnerability and sharing that and building on that. It gives you a starting point. I'm not gonna say like the 12 steps, but first you got to know where you are so you know where to go. So I appreciate that. Um, so today I will be discussing my leadership development plan. Okay, so leadership is a dynamic and evolving journey that demands continuous self-reflection, learning, and growth. And over this semester, I've had the opportunity to explore, like, as you mentioned before, Dr. Lam, like an overarching overwhelming amount of information.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get into my strengths and my weaknesses, you'll see why this was very, very difficult for me. Because I'll go down the rabbit hole and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I can't come back. And so, and I know I needed this project and I know I needed to present and I knew I had to do some kind of consensus and synthesis of this information, but it was extremely difficult, extremely, extremely. Out of all the projects we've done in this class, this has been by far like the most eye-opening experience. And really, I needed it, but at the same time, it was very difficult. And so, I'm trying to take in everything, um, again, and synthesize this to develop a plan. I've kind of pinpointed some strengths. I've looked at some areas of growth, and I've created a plan for the next 1 to 2 years. So looking at the various instruments used, I used Norhouse book, self-serve 360 feedback, and Cliff Strengths which were the Rath and Country book. And so when you look at my leadership skills, from the theory book, I have strong interpersonal traits, highly developed human and technical skills. I'm great at balancing task and relationship orientation. Um, I had strengths in almost all of them. I just chose some. I know we talked about servant leadership and transformational, and really, I I hate to admit this, but my transactional kind of outweighed my transformational. That shows some other room for growth. Like I saw so much. Like again, disclaimer, I just grab something and I'm gonna roll with it. But again, now there were some consistent themes throughout my assessments. There were some reinforcements and there were some contradictions. And so I was trying to make sense of that. I kept saying like, well, why did it say this? But over here it's a need. Over here is a strength. Anyway, so as far as self-awareness, that was a consistent theme throughout all my assessments. So that was shown as a strength with all of them. Um, and that's really the foundational strength for leadership. So that was great. I was glad to hear that. Communication and relationship building was also consistently highlighted. Um, it kind of validated my ability to create uplifting environments, foster collaboration, and recognize individual potential. Right, the developer. Now you're gonna see that developing others is also a weakness, but I'll get to that later. My contradictions. Um, well, let me go to my weaknesses. So, all right. So if you look back at my strength, one was develop, being a developer. And over here saying that's a weakness. And so I had to figure out how could it be both. And so that was my rabbit hole. And I'm so reflective. That was one of my strengths. Context. I'm always, or intellection. I think it's intellection. I'm constantly thinking. I love thinking. And I'm also very logical. And I can't let go until it makes sense. And so that was the problem with this project. It didn't make sense. And I was having a conversation with my daughter last week, and she said, Mom, you're always asking questions. I said, I'm seeking to understand. And she said, sometimes you won't understand and you got to be okay. Like, it is what it is. And I was like, I don't know if I could live with that. But anyway, moving forward, um, compassion and empathy, that floored me. I thought I was the most compassionate person. I'm always putting my feet in other people's shoes. Like I'm trying to feel what they feel. Future outlook. I was like, what? Like this can't be right. And so you have one of my strengths is context, which I love history. I love drawing on previous experiences. I like the historical context of things because, if I know where it was, I know how to kind of deal with some things. And so, yes, that hinders my future outlook because I'm so retrospective. And so, inclusive, again, I love people. And how could that be a weakness, being an inclusive leader? And when I started reflecting, I realized that I like working with people. I like bringing people together. I like team building. I like collaboration. But your strength is your strength. If I have to think for you or show you how to do it, I have a tendency to take over. Like, never mind, I'll do it. If I'm trying to show you, I get frustrated and I'll start doing it. Hence the directing and coaching that made sense. Um, I feel like I don't want to think for somebody else. And that's not good for a leader, because sometimes you're going to have to direct, sometimes you're going to have to coach. And of course, self-assurance and self-confidence. I hate public speaking. Um, Sometimes I people have a better opinion of me than I have of myself. Like, you're so confident. I'm not. I just do what I have to do. I'm the kind of behind the scenes person. I want everybody else to shine. I'll put everything in order. And I feel like being a servant. Like, if I can just put the correct check pieces in place, that I've done my part. But just evaluating all this information has just led me to come up with some areas for improvement. And so, from the self-stir assessment, my areas for improvement are openness, learning orientation, future outlook, compassion, empathy, and developing others. So, with that, I developed these goals to work towards for my professional leadership development goal. I need to increase my self-assurance and executive presence. I want to strengthen my conceptual and strategic thinking. I need to enhance openness and learning orientation. I need to develop future oriented leadership outlook and support the development of others. And so with that, I kind of came up with this chart to give me a roadmap um, to how to improve. And so I need to increase my self-assurance because I need to build confidence and my presence of influence, because you need that when you're at high levels of leadership. As far as strengthening my conceptual and strategic thinking, um, who can be a leader without having a vision? You have to be a visionary. And so I need to work on those skills. I need to foster a growth mindset. Um, because I can, if it's working, then if it's not broken, why fix it? So get past that mindset. Um, um, and again, working with other people, enhancing, um, coaching and directing and mentoring. And so these are some ways I plan to execute the plan. I have some objectives in here. I got some resources. I got some timelines. It's like a working document. I also put in some assessments to kind of evaluate where I am. If it's not working, go back, try some other things, but just, a starting point, because I do want to be in leadership. I do want to be better, and I do want to be effective. So my action plan, it highlights public speaking training, because again, I hate public speaking, taking some strategic courses to help me with becoming more of a visionary leader, um, participating in peer learning circles, reflective journaling, doing some trend analysis, getting some certifications, doing some initiatives. And when I do have a group that I lead, being able to help create individual development plans. So I need that kind of training so I'm equipped when I do get into that position of leadership. Okay, so I think I need to go back here. Sorry. All right, so I plan to increase my self-assurance and executive. Now, despite me possessing strong interpersonal skills, I do need greater self-confidence. I need to demonstrate confidence and be a composed leader and have a leadership presence. Um, as far as, excuse me. Second, I need to focus on strengthening my conceptual and strategic thinking. While my strengths and strategic and intellection suggest potential, there is a gap in high-level strategic planning and systems thinking is necessary for organizational leadership. Over 2 years, I aim to build and apply strategic thinking and conceptual leadership capacity. Third, I aim to enhance my openness and learning orientation. Developing a stronger learning mindset and openness to feedback is crucial for supporting innovation, adaptability, and inclusive leadership. Fourth, I want to work on future-oriented leadership outlook. While my strength in value and history is beneficial, I must cultivate a more future-focused perspective to guide innovation and navigate emerging challenges. Lastly, I will focus on supporting the development of others more intentionally. While I naturally excel in relationship building and communication, there is an opportunity to enhance coaching and mentoring skills to support the growth of team members. So I do have the gift to see the potential, but I don't actually do anything with the potential. So that's where the gap comes in. So I just wanted to make sure I touched on that. So in reflection, I am excited about this journey, and I'm dedicated to implementing my personal plan to enhance my leadership capabilities so I can positively impact any organization or team I'm a part of. Not necessarily education, because I'm at the end of my education career per se. I have 3 years before I can retire, and I wanted a skill that I could use city government, county government, hospital system, just give myself a variety of options. And so that's why I'm in development this this program. I didn't want to do anything else with education. I felt like I had enough foundational things already in place. And so again, this class, it opened up Pandora's box.
Mhm.
And while my husband and I were having breakfast this morning, I was just floored at how many things I thought about and trying to get it together. And so he even asked me a question about, like, sometimes how you get fixated and nobody can't change your mind. Is that a problem? I know it was personal. And I was like, you know what? It is. I gotta be open. As
Mhm.
indicated to one of my weaknesses for this plan. So looking at the leadership theories, the ones that resonated with me was the behavioral approach, authentic leadership, and the leader member exchange theory. And I think because I felt like they align with my natural stuff and just using introspection, I just recognized that although I am self-aware, I can use that and build on that to help me with my weaknesses or my areas for growth. Um, again, um, maintaining consistency between my natural abilities and my natural inclinations. I got to get outside the box. I got to get more comfortable. And so I like the leader membership exchange theory because I just love groups. I love relationships. I love people. I love collaboration. I just got to get more comfortable with somebody coming into the group not equipped to handle their position within the group. I feel like group members have to complement one another. And what I mean by that, I might be good at organization, you might be good at executing, you might be great at. So, but when you don't have your strength, I feel like it's a problem. I know that's a skill I got to work on. I know it's a skill I got to work on. So, um, as far as self-stir, what I liked about self-stir was that it did give us some strengths and it also highlighted some weaknesses. And so it gives you suggestions on how to work on those things. Resources they keep providing, and you keep coming back when you're working on it. So that was part of on my action plan as well, to make sure when I'm working on things to go back and, kind of see where I am now. And again, leadership is a continuous cycle. So, while I'm working on those things, it might highlight something else. So I am aware of that, and I'll work on that. As far as Wrath and Conchi, I really liked it because when it talked about context, and it talked about, my inclination for being drawn to the past, but that past can help inform for future decisions. It can give me confidence in understanding historical patterns and learning from past experiences. My positivity, that was evident. I'm always happy. I always see the glass half full. I'm always pouring into people. So um, it was some feel good responses. Um, and then being strategic, again, I thought I was strategic until I started reading all the other stuff. But and of course, being a developer and then having that as a weakness, I do like witnessing when other people grow. I do like um watching people and helping people, but I don't also, it's not, it's where I don't have any application. So um I got one more thing. So this semester has helped me realize that self-awareness um is a great foundation, but it's not the end point, it's really just the beginning. And
Mm-hmm.
class discussions, peer feedback, and all the other leadership instruments, I now clearly understand how my strengths could have been blind spots, and how they are blind spots because they're not balanced with certain things. And so I need to work on those things. Um, the strength-based leadership, I learned that successful leaders don't try to be good at everything. That's me. They have to build their strengths and surround themselves with others who complement them. And so um, it just gave me a great foundation for understanding of who I am and what I need to build on and how I need to grow. In the book, of course, all the theories, I'm learning so much about task and relationship, vision and detail, understanding, compassion, and those sort of things. And most of all, I've seen leadership as an influence process and a commitment to grow for myself and those I serve. So as a result of this class, I move forward with a clear vision of applying theory to practice in ways that align with who I am and inspire to become as a leader. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Let's think about
I'm trying to stop sharing. I'm listening. Oh, here it is. Okay.
let's think about the original Apple Corporation. There were two people at the top. We only really remember one, and we remember Steve Jobs because he was the visionary. But just as importantly was Steve Wozniak, um, in that he was the day-to-day, he had the skill set. He was an engineer. He could actually turn the vision into a product. Um, they worked well together for a while. But then, of course, Apple fell and they fired Jobs, and but it was revitalized later on. But um, basically, why he got fired was is he tried to build what was it, the next computer, NEXT, and bankrupted them with all that because he didn't he wasn't as I heard Bill Gates say he couldn't even write code. He had no skill set on the technical side. His skill was in vision. His skill was in vision. Um, and that's fine at the upper levels of the organization. So the conflict for us as we're growing into leadership roles is to understand that you won't ever get to that visionary part unless there's an underpinning of competence, a skill, like Tawanda said, that mentoring, coaching, building, working with people, showing your skill at that level. That's how you grow in most organizations to get that opportunity, unless you start your own like Jobs did. See, that was the thing. He skipped all of that learning part because he had a guy that could do that. And that served him well until he got in, when he was in the only game in town, when they were the only one building these. But when he got into a competitive environment, he crashed and burned. Apple crashed and burned. They had to fire him. He did not have the ability when in a competitive environment. He didn't sit in the seats and build the skills along the way. Now, he later revived, again, when they got the organization cleaned up and got out of debt and basically receivership, and then they brought him back to be, again, the visionary, the things, but they understood then, we don't let him actually, be in the kitchen cooking. He just needs to be out front. He needs to be the visionary of what the menu ought to look like, but he can't cook a lick. So, but in most organizations, unless you're an entrepreneur and start your own, you got to sit in the seats. You've got to build those skills, as Tawanda was talking about. Yes, you can learn to work on your vision for when you get your shot at the top, but you won't get that shot at the top if you don't build the skill set, the tools along the way. That's the lesson to be learned here, is you got to build the skills along the way, or you won't get that shot to be that visionary. And so you fill yourself with people around you who have those skills, and you learn from them. You don't just say, "Well, you just go do that." When we say, "Well, we'll get people who can, I'm self-aware of the things that I don't know. I'll bring people in who can do that." But you need to be sure that you're understanding what they do, because you won't be any better off as a leader or as an organization if all you do is just bring in mercenaries and you don't learn and you don't integrate that into the organization or into your skill set. You got to at least know what they're doing. That's a lesson for us all. That yes, it's okay to say I have deficiencies and bring people in whose strengths, are my weaknesses, but just doing that and not learning yourself from that will not help you as a leader nor as an organization, because those tend to be revolving door kinds of things. But that mentoring, coaching, especially in the school business, is so important. If you learn that, then you can move up, and then you can be that visionary leader. All right. Beverly's going to wait. So Rebecca, I guess it's you.
Hold on one second. Okay. Can everybody see that?
We can. My leadership plan.
Okay. So I'm glad that I was next because my internet is spotty. So I'm going to try to get through this
Well,
without
I'll
being
keep my
kicked off.
camera off. That'll help.
Okay. Okay, so I really enjoyed this project, evaluating myself. Um, I I have a lot of strengths, but I wasn't really actually thinking about my weaknesses, which, you know, I was able to determine more about myself through the assessments and stuff, determining my weaknesses. So starting off my strengths, I like to treat others fairly. I do like to collaborate with others, like to get other people's opinions. Um, I like to try to figure out different ways to overcome challenges. Um, I'm very hardworking. I'm diligent. Um, I am dependable. Um, and I'm very insightful of my own work. Um, and I like to be able to help others. My weaknesses, one of my weaknesses is receiving constructive criticism effectively and how to use that criticism in order to to my advantage. Um, Recently, I had a conversation with my supervisor about, some of the things that was going on, within my work. And I had experienced a lot of trauma this semester, which has been very difficult for me. In losing clients. Actually, a client passed away right in front of me. So I've had to deal with a lot of things here recently. And it has kind of affected my work, with having to navigate that kind of challenge of, especially a person passing away in front of you. You were not expecting it. So with her constructive criticism, I kind of took that to heart. And I was just like, well, I mean, I first support, I was able to navigate. And I just got a message that my internet connection is unstable. So um, my weaknesses are also being self-confident. Um, I am more task-based. I can't, I struggle with delegating appropriate tasks to others. Um, in my job now, we have an assistant, that is there to help us do visits and all kinds of things. And I struggle with having her do some of my work. I want to do it myself in order to make sure that it's done correctly. And I need to work on that. Um, and that's my biggest weakness is that, I speak out and using the correct dialogue in my conversations. Confidence to conversate within a group. I'd have difficulty able to do, a presentation. Um, my I need to know that all work is achievable and reducing stress of knowing that it is correct. And I'm also too hard on myself. I've heard that a lot too. My leadership development needs are inspiring others, being able to guide others toward the common goal, and navigating change appropriately. Sometimes within the government, there's things that come down that, that we're having to change pretty quickly. And, I need to be able to make that change. And like I said, I gathered all this from my surveys, especially the leadership behavior questionnaire. I took that one into account. Um, just, it showed me that I was more relationship based than task oriented. My peer assessments and then the Johari's Windows self assessment showed that I needed to improve on my self orientation. My goals and objectives and timeline. One is to become more trusting of others. And to do that, show support to others and receive constructive criticism effectively. And I plan to do that within a year. I need to join more committees within the workplace in order to be able to speak out and willing to embrace them and establish a professional connection with current leaders. And I'm willing to do that within a year. Another one is to establish self-confidence, get more involved in group speaking, and improve conversations with others within 2 years. And my reflection, like I said, this class has shown me, what I need to overcome and my weaknesses. And taking the surveys helped on establishing a foundation to overcome my challenges and understand the qualities of leadership and growing. That leadership is a constant growth process. And that concludes my presentation.
Very good. Thank you, Rebecca. Excellent. All right, now, the takeaway from Rebecca's that we all should remember, and I'm going to use a golf analogy here on this one. Golfers keep all these statistics more than, just incredible. Now, golf's a singular sport, it's not a team sport. They talk about we and us, me and my caddy, but the caddy don't ever hit any shots. You're out there by yourself. But we keep these incredible statistics in golf because always our first thought or our first action is to do the things that we like to do rather than the things that we need to do. To be an effective leader, just like to be an effective golfer, you've got to work on the things you're not doing well, that you're not being successful at. And that's what Rebecca was just talking about. Embrace those weaknesses, those failures, and work on them to improve them to successes. We do the things we love to do that we're good at. That's just human nature. But that won't make you a better leader. If you want to be a better leader, you got to work on the things that you're not good at. Just like golfers. They have all these things about sand saves and getting up and down from around the green and fairways and regulation and all those different stats that they have. And what do? Just like you see, you see the average weekend golfer when they go, well, one thing, they don't practice, but when they do, they just do the things that they do well. They don't work on hitting those long irons. Nobody likes to hit them. And then they try to buy their game by getting all these exotic 7 woods and 9 woods so they won't have to hit long. At the end of the day, folks, if you can't hit long irons, you can't play. You got to work on that. Nobody likes it, but you got to do it. You got to work on your sand saves. You got to work on the stuff that's not fun. You got to work on all the stuff. You can't just stand and hit driver all the time or just putt or chipping, around the greens, get in the sand trap. Hitting off, perfect lies. No, throw it in a divot. Learn to hit it out of a divot. Do all the stuff that's not fun. That's work that makes it boring and tedious. That's the part you got to work on. Leadership's the same way. The stuff that you're not good at is what you've got to identify and work on if you want to be a better leader. That's what's limiting you as in your leadership. That's what's limiting you. Do we have anybody else today on the hit parade that wants to present? Now, remember, I'm going to put the document that I had on that mental map, I'll put that under today's Zoom session. I think it's 4. I'll put that under there. Remember my sign up. If you want to do your presentation with me individually, I have sign up times. I've got a lot of times on Mondays because obviously blackout started for final dissertations yesterday. So I'm free on those sessions because we're in blackout now on proposals and defenses. We're done for this. I got one carryover to Tuesday on a proposal, but other than that, I have my Mondays and Fridays are getting clearer. My weekdays, I've got a new calendar. If you want to talk with me, I'll post it at the beginning of our shell. If I haven't done it already, I'll have a new calendar for May. I have to take a week off for the equivalent of teacher work days. We have a week of those. They're called assessment days. We're going to be working in CAPE, our accreditor. But I'll be back on the air after that week. And I have a full calendar of times during the summer that you can meet with me if you need to talk about dissertations or whatever you need to talk about. I am available. And so let me do those things. Let me share my screen and look at those before I leave you today. All right, this is the one that I will put. Let me save that right quick. File, save as. Let me go to. Okay, my summer dissertation sign up is already here. I've got some Turnitin-ins if you want to put your annotated bibliographies, or if you've got dissertation, just remind me. It should click and tell me that they're in there, but I've got some Turnitin boxes set up for that if you've got stuff that you want to continue to work on. Okay, underneath Saturday Zoom 4, I'm going to put that document, create. I'm just going to call it mental map because that's what it is. And that's what I designed it to be. I mean, okay, again, I made these, this is I when for my master students, I make them they're at a lower level than y'all. I made them a mental map. You should be able to make your own. We teach you how to make your own at the doctoral level, or you teach yourself. We give you the opportunity. We make the ones for the master students. And so that's a mental map that I made for them. They're for their first leadership job. Now you might have a better one than mine. You may say, well, Dale, that's old school. Some of that stuff's out. Won't hurt my feelings. Make your own. But that's for me because I'm a linear person. That's how I make my mental maps. I make lists. And then I convert those into narratives or into action, whatever the case may be. But that's how you make a mental map. This is the job that I want. What would I need to do to be successful at the very beginning? I'm thinking success from day one. What am I going to need to do? That's your mental map. It's not just I want this job. All right. If I had that job, what would I do? I mean, a lot of times people are just all consumed with getting the job and they don't realize it's more important to be able to do it than get it. That's why they can't keep it. All their energy was in getting it, not building the skills and the awareness to then be able to do it when they got it. You've seen that people who politic go, every time the door's open, they're in some meeting. They think it, the more I'm seen, the more my name, But when they get there, they've got no skill. They have no. All they did was their skill was in being able to get a job, not keep a job or do a job, and they don't. Very few times does that end well for them. You got to have that mental map of, all right, if I had that job, what would it take for me to be successful at the very beginning? And then you make another mental map about midway through the first year. All right, I've got through the first part of it. Then what am I going to need to do the second half of the year to be successful? And then in year 2, what am I going to need to do to be successful? That mental mapping never stops. What am I going to do at each of the levels to go to the next one? What do I need to do? I hear that term all the time in the modern zeitgeist. Take it to the next level. Oh, how do you do that? That's what I always ask. How do you do that? How do you take it to the next level? What are you going to do? I want to take it to the next level. All right. What is the next level and what are you going to need to get there? Well, no, I'm just going to take it to the next level. Well, you're going to have, not only are you not going to go to the next level if you don't know what the next level is and have a mental map of how to get there, you're not going to stay at the level you are. And so it's okay that talking about next level stuff, as long as you understand what that level is and how to get there and what it would take to be successful. More importantly, once I get there, what am I going to need to do to be successful at this level? If you can do that mental mapping, you've got it made. All right. If we don't have any more today, again, book a time with me to do your presentations. I've had a great time this semester. I know this is a slog. I told you it would be when we started. This is about your literature review. And Tawanda, thank you for being the perfect example of how not to go down the rabbit hole. And I told you that that's what happens in the literature review.
Oh my God, it was overwhelming. I'm telling you,
Yes,
it was.
and it can be, and that doesn't mean. But what that means is you have an inquisitive mind, and the people with inquisitive minds end up doing that. But then at some point you have to say, "Stop! This is enough." When you're in a hole, you got to quit digging
Yeah.
and
Gotta
get it
figure out
focused and get it on paper as to what you're going to do with it. Make some sense out of it, get some direction on it, and get going. Too many dissertations die in chapter 2. They can't get out of chapter 2. They have a million note cards or whatever what they're doing, but they can't get it organized and get a flow going with it. They get too much. They just get too much. Now, one of the things that I do for my students is I outline their chapter 2, and I make them stick to that outline. I make them stick to their outline. But I was interested in it. No. Don't think you're hurting the team. But that's somebody else's study. That's not yours. Let's focus on this outline here. Again, it's a mental map. Again, I make outlines. I make lists. I do that for mine. I work with them. Stick to this. And you got to be disciplined to do it. You got to be disciplined 2 ways. You got to be disciplined to go and do it, number 1. But then when you get into it, be focused on what and know what you're doing. Have a plan, a mental map of what you're going to do when you get there. All right. If there's nothing else, I appreciate you. Thank you for choosing Gardner Webb, the DOL program. I've enjoyed working with each and every one of you. We had good times. We got to be together some. We shared a meal. We did all the things that we were supposed to do this semester. So I declare this a successful semester. Again, get in touch with me. You have my contact information. You have my signups. You're welcome to book anytime, and I'll be right with you when we do. All right. Thank you. God bless you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Lamb.